Welcome back to Intelligent Investment Today, the podcast concerned with all things value investment. In each episode, we take a look at a different topic from the investment landscape and attempt to apply the lessons as laid down by the man widely considered to be the father of the craft, Benjamin Graham, to the matter at hand. In this episode, we take a look at one of the most interesting businesses included in Warren Buffett's portfolio at Berkshire Hathaway. We will be talking about See's Candies. We will be considering exactly how Buffett became involved in this Californian candy manufacturer back in 1971, and how the purchase of this business turned out to be a life-altering event for Buffett in terms of investment philosophy. So without further ado, let's get right down to it. As ever, sit back, strap in, and get ready to take on board another lesson in value investment as inspired by Benjamin Graham. Back in 1971, I think it's pretty fair to say that Warren Buffett was a very different investor to the one we see at Berkshire Hathaway today. Up to this point, he was still very much wedded to his mentor, Benjamin Graham's approach to investment. Buffett, like Graham, sought out businesses that were bargains from a quantitative standpoint, with little or no consideration for the quality of the underlying business. Even if the business was such a poor one that it had no viable future ahead of it, this need not be a problem providing it was available to purchase for less than its liquidation value. This, of course, is a cigar butt approach to investing. You discover laying on the ground the damp remains of a cigar that somebody has tossed into the gutter. It is, of course, pretty disgusting, but it still has left in it one puff. And best still, this puff is available virtually for free. Up to this point, virtually all of Buffett's investments had been cigar butts to some degree or another, including incidentally the company from which the conglomerate later took its name. Berkshire Hathaway had been a moribund textile manufacturer that Buffett began purchasing stock in back in 1962. It was perhaps clear to everyone, including Buffett himself, that textile manufacturing in the United States had had its best days behind it, unable as it was to compete with foreign imports on price. But Buffett deemed that this fact did not matter because it was available cheaply enough. The point was that no business was so unattractive from a quality standpoint that it was out of bounds to him if it was available to buy at a cheap enough price. It was only after meeting Charlie Munger, Buffett's other big investment influence, that he slowly began evolving away from his love of a good old cigar butt. And See's Candies would go on to become arguably Buffett's first dip of his toes into a business that was not available cheaply from a quantitative perspective. See's Candies was something of a Californian institution, having been founded in 1921, and was well known across the state for the quality of its products. When Buffett was made aware that See's Candies was coming up for sale, he had initially been reluctant to get involved in the candy business, but he nonetheless decided to dispatch his right-hand man, Charlie Munger, to investigate the business further. It's fair to say that Munger was pretty impressed with what he saw, and returned to Omaha singing the business's praises. Munger advised Buffett to buy See's if it could be bought for a reasonable enough price. To Buffett, the word reasonable at this time would probably still have been interchangeable with the word expensive. But nonetheless, the deal went through and Buffett was now in the candy business. Munger had correctly highlighted what made See's such a special business and one worth paying more for than Buffett would have formerly been comfortable with. For See's had a unique competitive advantage. Its reputation as the maker of quality products gave it a pricing power that rivals simply could not live with. For if you turned up to your dinner date brandishing something other than See's Candies, your unfortunate partner would instantly know how little you thought of them, and you weren't getting laid that night. And if you didn't pretty quickly buck up your ideas, perhaps ever for that matter, you're out of the evolutionary cycle, all because you wouldn't pay a couple of extra bucks for a nice box of chocolates. And that, boys and girls, is a pretty strong incentive not to cheap out on your candies. This competitive moat, the power to charge, within reason, whatever you want for your wares, would prove to be a huge life lesson for Buffett. And going forward, this would be one of the first things he would look for in any potential investment. The lesson learned at See's Candies about the importance of pricing power would directly influence many of Buffett's subsequent deals, including perhaps one of Berkshire's biggest and most lucrative. That is his purchase of stakes in the Coca-Cola Company. Buffett saw in Coke many of the same strengths as he saw at See's Candies. Here was a product again that had strong pricing power, a product with very little direct competition. If Coke is your go-to carbonated drink of choice, it doesn't matter if it's 10 cents or 20 cents more expensive than a rival brand, you'll pay it. And if a bar or store doesn't stock it, you won't go back there again. And this has been key to Coca-Cola's monumental success over the years. The ability to keep raising prices, and just like with See's Candies, people will keep buying the stuff no matter what. I'm sure the same factors would have also been instrumental in his decision to buy Apple stock. If someone had said a couple of decades ago that in 2025, Apple could get away with charging thousands of dollars for its latest mobile phone, you'd probably have thought them to be mad. But Apple have done it. Because if Apple is your thing, and you can afford it, then you'll pay whatever it takes. Again, another example of pricing power in action. Today, See's Candies represents just a tiny proportion of Berkshire Hathaway's portfolio, but it continues to produce healthy profits. Berkshire have been careful throughout not to undermine the very thing that makes See's so very special. Many would have been tempted to aggressively expand the business's footprint and increase profits by reducing the quality of the ingredients. But Buffett realised the moment See's loses its reputation for quality and exclusivity, then it becomes just like all the rest. It can, after all, take 30 years to build up a great reputation and 30 minutes to destroy it. So what can we take away from this edition of Intelligent Investment today? Apart from, of course, not cheaping out on candy whilst on dinner dates. The case of See's Candies highlights the desirability of pricing power as a qualitative trait. We see similar pricing power at Coca-Cola and at Apple and at businesses such as Ferrari. Sadly for the value investor, businesses that have this sort of competitive moat are few and far between and are only irregularly available at prices that we are likely to want to pay. But we should still keep an eye out for special conditions where these businesses might suddenly become available at agreeable prices. Big market downturns can occasionally make these businesses obtainable from a value perspective. And if the opportunity does present itself to buy in at a reasonable price, then we should take it, for businesses like this are as good as they get. The important thing is that the allure of such magnificent businesses should not result in the value investor dropping their guard. Whilst the attractiveness of such powerful competitive advantages is obvious enough, what is much less obvious is what price to pay for that advantage. The prime basis for any decision to invest and what price to pay should therefore still be firmly rooted in what can be found in the accounts. The quantitative data, in other words. If there is not a quantitative case to be made to purchase the stock of a business, then regardless of how great a business's qualitative outlook may be, the stock should be passed over. An excellent qualitative showing, brought about through a strong competitive advantage, should only become a pull to invest if it can be demonstrated that the business can be purchased for a reasonable amount based upon its financial showing. The case of Boeing should be case in point that strong competitive advantages are not always of the permanent order and cannot be totally relied upon to deliver strong investment results. And this should act as a warning from history for those prepared to pay any price for a great business. It is probably true to say that businesses like Coca-Cola, Apple or Ferrari may very well be bought intelligently by investors at prices well beyond what would make sense from a value perspective. And they will probably do well enough from them. But if the value investor must deviate from the value approach, then they'll do well to mentally ring-fence such holdings inside the wrapper of intelligent speculations, for such operations will fall far short of the definition of intelligent investment that must always be justified on quantitative and qualitative grounds. Failure to psychologically ring-fence such holdings can allow speculative tendencies to infect the value approach upon which the investor has been trained, leading to confusion and fuzzy thinking. On that, I shall draw this edition to a close. I hope you've enjoyed it and will consider adding to playlist. Please do continue to spread the word about the benefits of the podcast so we can make this as large a community as possible. I'm David Coombs. This has been Intelligent Investment Today. Until next time, stay safe and happy investing.